LasVegasAreaTrails.com, my hiking, running, climbing site. And here we've got the health education link on the far right. And you click on that, and then you see the Achieving Your Optimal Health webinar series. And you see every one of these links here represents a webinar that we have done since June 12th of 2019. Give you an idea of these webinars. Here's one. Well, let's find one of Denise's. The Science of Immunity. And so we click on that, and there you see the Science of Immunity. Denise and Janet gave this webinar, and you see a little description of the webinar. Oh, webinar replay will go here. I still need to put the webinar replay there. Sorry about that. Let's go back. And we'll do The Age of Quantum. Since Denise is here, we'll show another one of her webinars. And so here, we've got the webinar replay video right under the description. And then in this webinar, you will learn benefits of attending the webinar, and then about the presenter, and then all the slides. So this is how our webinars are usually arranged, and it's always on a health topic. And the theme, again, achieving your optimal health. So each of our presenters focuses on how people can optimize their health given the area of professional expertise that they represent. And Glen Alex is tonight with Healthy Boundaries. And she's going to talk about boundaries, the importance of maintaining boundaries in order to live your optimal life in optimal health, energy, what happens when you don't have strong boundaries. And you're going to learn about an inability to say no can sap your energy, unspoken expectations kill relationships, inappropriate sharing can prevent a relationship from developing naturally. And all these are violations of boundaries. So you learn how to care for yourself by learning to say no, to be assertive to others, communicate your needs with love, to appropriately share who you are authentically. So these are valuable learnings, and we hope that by the end of this webinar, you'll learn how you can experience more energy and less stress, achieve your goals more rapidly, enjoy more fulfilling relationships. All of these are benefits of establishing healthy boundaries. And then who is Glen? Okay, Glen Alex, I met her at the Las Vegas Health and Fitness Chamber, and learned early on, she is an author of Living in Total Health. She has an entire total health outlook where she looks at the large picture of health and drills it down into physical, mental, emotional, spiritual aspects of health. One of the aspects that she's focusing on tonight, though, is boundaries. Very important. In fact, so important that she has created an online course focusing on establishing boundaries and how to go about this. So she's really deep into helping people through establishing boundaries. She's one of these people that if you look at her bio statements, she knew, she kind of knew who she was as a child, that health was important, interactions between people were important to her. She had to analyze those from the youngest age, and was aware of helpful versus hurtful interactions and begin to ask, okay, how do interactions between people work? Yeah, she's asking this of herself as a child very naturally. And so what you're going to be experiencing from Glen is something that is very much at the heart of who she is. And then as far as her holistic health approach, she has a family history of diabetes, and she did not want to experience that herself. So she began researching, okay, how can I prevent diabetes? How can I minimize my risk of diabetes by my health routine? And so not only did she begin to learn and establish ways to minimize or prevent diabetes, but she also went on to look at other health issues people face. And so that's been also a life focus of Glen. So we're really fortunate and honored to have Glen here tonight with us. And I am going to turn it over to Glen and just let her say something about boundaries. I'm going to unshare my screen. And when we're talking about boundaries, Glen, just tell us about what do you mean by boundaries? And just go ahead and educate us here.
Well, first of all, I have to thank you for that wonderful introduction, and I don't know how to follow it.
You'll do great.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate this opportunity. And as David said, boundaries are at the heart of who I am. And it's been part of my core since very early on when I watched people interact, and it just developed from there. And my goal actually for everyone on this planet is to be joyful, connected, confident, and complete. And for me, boundaries is one sure way to get there. And so what boundaries are basically a line in the sand. Remember in childhood, you would take a stick or your toe and draw it across the dirt and dare your friend to step over that line. That the line in the sand is where what you will and won't tolerate meet. If you cross this line, then what's going to happen? If I cross that line, then what's going to happen? So your boundaries, a boundary is basically the limit. How far you can go, how far you will go, and how far you allow other people to go. And it's basically where what you will and won't tolerate meet. That is a very clear line. It's less tangible in adulthood. It's more invisible, though it's still the same. There are barriers, there are boundaries. Does that answer your question?
Very good. Yeah, and again, this is something that that is very much the heart of Glen's whole approach. And so, why is it important for us to understand boundaries?
Well, the understanding about boundaries, the foundations, the basics, the truths about boundaries are what will allow you to make the more difficult choices. That foundation will empower you to do what's right for yourself and your family. Boundaries are really important to understand, number one, because they have a purpose. They have two purposes, actually. The first purpose is individuation. Your boundaries tell you where you begin and end as a person and where I begin and end as a person. It gives us that opportunity for deep self-awareness. If we were not clear on where we began and end as humans, then there would be enmeshment, there would be psychological entanglements, there would be all other kinds of problems that we need to deal with on our own. Because as an adult, as adults, we are individually responsible for our own health and happiness. If we are not clear about our own limits of self-awareness, then we don't take the steps necessary to reach our optimal health. So the one purpose of boundaries is individuation, to know where you begin and end as a person. The second purpose of boundaries is for protection. Our boundaries are our personal alarm systems. We have boundaries on the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual levels, and we get all kinds of signs and signals from our inner wisdom, our intuition, if you will, that let us know when we are in danger, whether it's physical danger, emotional danger, mental danger, or spiritual danger. We have alarm bells that go off. One of those alarm bells is your intuition. Have you ever had a bad feeling? Have you ever said, I knew I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have gone over there? That's your intuition saying this is not a safe situation for you. Even if it wasn't physical danger, there might have been some mental or emotional issue that was harmful to you. So your intuition is our primary alarm system, alarm bell. Other alarm bells include physical sensations. Have you ever been around anybody and you just got this creepy feeling? Your skin crawled, you got a knot in your stomach, the hair on the back of your neck raised. That was also a way of your body, your inner wisdom saying, okay, pay attention, something's not right here for you. Okay. Explosive or intense, an intense emotional reaction to something, anger or fear. You know, if you know, I had a situation with a friend, we weren't getting along, and she just kept calling me. I asked for space, she didn't give it to me, so she kept calling me. So every time she called, and I would just react with anger. Why does she keep calling me? Because she kept crossing my line. So intense emotional responses can also be an indication of a boundary violation, and that you could be in some type of danger or at risk. So boundaries are huge. They're very important. Boundaries define and protect our uniqueness. Without them, we would just be confused as to who we are, and we give into whatever dominant personality is around us.
So what you're saying is that if we don't understand boundaries and we don't understand there's a boundary issue, our body may still know that. And we have these feelings of discomfort, but we don't know why. And we don't know why this relationship is not working. We don't know why we don't want to be around this person, or why we feel like we're giving ourselves away around this person. You know, I was really, it was an emotional experience for me to read the boundaries section of your book, Living in Total Health. Because immediately with the illustrations that you gave, and you were talking about boundary issues, and you were saying, well, this is an example, that's an example. And I began immediately, my mind went to places in my past and even in my present where there was discomfort with boundaries being violated, or me being the violator of boundaries, which is even worse. And it was just, it was uncomfortable. I found myself getting uncomfortable as I was reading it because all these movies were playing in my mind. So it helped me understand that, well, there's a reason.
I'm glad to hear that. And the discomfort was your willingness to be open to learning something new about yourself, whether it's uncomfortable or not. And you had mentioned the physical sensations. The doctor can attest to, our bodies are wise. Our bodies tell us all the time what's going on, what's working in our lives, what isn't. We just don't pay attention. So the why my relationship isn't working, or why this situation doesn't work out, comes after the acknowledgement that there's a problem, the understanding of the foundations of boundaries, and then the why sometimes come in the choices or in the actions or in the aftermath. The why doesn't always come first, and a lot of people wait to understand why before they make different choices. That's not necessary. You have to first acknowledge that something is not working in your life with a given person or in a particular situation, whether it might be at work, it might be in a romantic relationship, it might be in a family relationship. But acknowledging that there is a problem is really important. And then acknowledging your responsibility in that situation. And what I mean by that is what you need to change about the situation. Oftentimes with boundaries, we tend to wait for other people to change and make it better for us. We wait for people to guess what we need and give it to us. Unspoken expectations kill relationships. Or we hope, we sit back and hope that they will finally figure out what I need and give it to me. And that kind of hope causes depression. That kind of hope causes a lot of anxiety. That kind of hope creates a deep internal loneliness because people can't read your mind. And even if they could, most may not give you what you want if it's not what they want. So boundaries are deep. And boundaries are much more than the absence of abuse. And boundaries are much more than just saying no. Sometimes boundaries are about not putting yourself in a position to say yes or no. So.
I failed to mention Glen is also a licensed clinical social worker. And if you can imagine the situations that she experiences in her work, probably present a whole lot of boundary issues and understanding, seeing boundary issues where maybe the people you're working with just don't see them, and then that's part of your education, helping them in their change.
Absolutely. So with this pandemic, I do teletherapy, and most of my clients are female, and they've come with anxiety and depression as their presenting problem. And when we get down to it, the issues were there before the shutdown. They're overwhelmed, they're stressed, they're depressed, they're anxious, basically because of poor boundary. Because they don't say no when it's appropriate, because they don't set clear limits with people. One example is a client gave a loved one her debit card number because a loved one wanted to buy something for her newborn baby. And of course, my client was like, yeah, I love the baby, go for it. About how much will it be? And gave her all the credit card information. It was supposed to be about a couple $100. Turns out that the family member spent over $2,000. And it's not like a credit card where you can, dispute it. This is actual cash that my client lost because she didn't have clear boundaries. She didn't make a clear agreement. Well, let me back up here. There are different types of boundaries. The physical boundary, obviously, is your body, your frame. That separates you from another person. And that's when you get the creepy crawly feelings when you're standing in line in the grocery store and somebody gets too close and you keep doing this, trying to get them off of you. I like to swing my purse around. That's the physical boundary. The mental boundary is about agreements. Verbal, written, behavioral agreements is how two or more people decide how things will go. And when we have unspoken expectations, the boundary violation there is because only one person decides how it will go and expects the other person to just go along with it. So what happened with this client is she had an unspoken expectation that her family member would do what she expected without saying it, without having that agreement. And the family member just took it one step further than my client thought would happen. A couple of other types of boundary issues are emotional. That's the fuzziest of them all. It's when you get caught up in someone else's drama and you take it on as your own. It's not empathy. Emotional boundary issues are not empathy. It's about acting out someone else's stuff and getting so involved in it, and this is funny because we did this as children, but it looks a little more sophisticated in adulthood. I was about 8 years old, had a disagreement it was three of us that hung out together. So I had a disagreement with Rachel, So Rachel and I weren't speaking. And then Liza, she stopped speaking to me because Rachel stopped speaking to me, even though Liza and I didn't have any problems. So Liza took on Rachel's stuff and took on her drama and involved a third person that had nothing, and she had nothing to do with it. So emotional boundary issues are more sophisticated in adulthood, but it's basically that. And spiritual boundaries are not about religion, religious rites, worship. Spiritual boundaries are about not living up to your own beliefs and values. Your own beliefs and values. If you go against your own beliefs and values to please another person, that's a boundary issue. You go to church or worship on Sunday, and then on Monday, you side with the boss who calls your coworker this, this, and this, or fires them for no reason. That's a spiritual boundary issue, because you're gonna experience some guilt over that. You're gonna experience some self-doubt, and you might even beat yourself up about it, because you know internally that you violated your own principles. It's not about anybody else's belief system, it's about your own. So that's what I mean by spiritual boundaries. So getting back to the unspoken expectations of the client, allowing someone else to use her card and take her money without a tangible agreement. So.
Well, it's kind of interesting, without violating the general rule of don't get political. I will at least, I at least need to acknowledge that there's a lot of boundary issues in politics. And you have a situation where people do things and say things and support things they would never do, say, and support, except they've taken on someone else's cause,
Yes.
belief system,
Yes.
and we're just seeing that all around us at this point. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there are definite mental and emotional boundary issues going on in politics. I have people, Facebook friends, making comments and making statements as if they're absolute fact, and they've done no research on their own, and they didn't fact check when you can Google anything in 10 seconds. So yeah, I agree with you. A lot of the angst that's going on in our world is about poor mental and emotional boundaries.
Mm-hmm. And taking on a belief that you have not researched for yourself.
Yes.
You have not made your own. You're taking on someone else's belief, someone else's values. And that is, they've invaded your boundaries. I mean, they've invaded you. Yes. There's so much of that going on right now. And we're going to see a lot in the next 48 days.
Oh, good Lord. And that's a great example. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a great example.
So what do unclear boundaries, what damage do unclear boundaries cause?
Oh, quite a lot,
I know
actually.
You mentioned some of it, but.
Well, unclear boundaries, if there's not a clear physical boundary, then you put yourself at risk of physical harm. You could be harmed physically if you're not if you don't have a clear boundary there, with people touching you inappropriately. People continue to touch you after you've said no or stop. So there's that physical risk. Emotionally and mentally, again, a lot of the clients that are coming in now with depression and anxiety is because they don't have any clear boundaries with the people around them. They take on too much where they're overwhelmed, can't get everything done, so they feel guilty. And the more they feel guilty, then that depresses them. They feel anxious because if they tell someone no, they're afraid of losing approval, of not being loved. Other examples are headaches, digestive issues, muscular issues, because they're carrying around this tension, not knowing, what's going to happen if they do set clear boundaries. They're afraid of the pushback, and you will get pushback once you start to set healthy boundaries for yourself. People around you are used to getting their way from you. So of course they're going to want that to continue. They will push back. So unhealthy boundaries can result in physical illness, emotional, mental illness, and of course your spiritual disconnection.
It's interesting that let's take this backwards, and let's just start with the headache. Let's start with the headache or the low energy or the digestive issues. And what people often do is they're going to see their doctor.
Yes.
And what the doctor often does is gives you a prescription. So now you've got a pill with perhaps side effects for your headache or your digestion. And you're still in the situation where boundaries are being violated. So it's like I'm a runner, and I do distance running. And if I'm wearing a pair of shoes that's injuring me, and I take a whole lot of painkillers, but I keep those shoes and I keep running in them, what's going to happen? Injury is going to get worse.
Going to get worse.
And worse.
Yes. Yes, exactly, exactly. So I do have one client who's having some marital issues, and she's so tense that she can't sleep. So during the day, she's very fatigued, and she's fatigued because she's worried about what he will do. Will he do what he said he'll do? Will he work it out? Will they blah, 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 blah. So that snowballs. And it just saps her energy. So she's walking around on eggshells with her muscles tight. She can't sleep, which of course is going to have other negative health effects. So you're right. If you're continue to stay in the situation where your boundaries are poor, and I'm not saying leave the situation, you have to shift your relationship to that situation for anything to change instead of waiting for the other person to change. So you're absolutely right. The physical consequences, the health consequences are tremendous with poor boundaries.
So it's not a good idea to take sleeping pills at night and take caffeine during the day and hope that takes care of your boundary issue.
Well, no, that's not going to take care of the boundary issue. That's not going to take care of the boundary issues, but the doctor can speak more to symptom management. So that's all it is.
That's interesting. I'm wondering the people that we have here, Madeline, Denise, Alice, Annie, and Karen. And thank you all for being a part of this webinar. I'm wondering if any of you found your mind going to boundary issues that you yourself are experiencing. And I'm not asking you a reveal all session here, but I'm just wondering if any of you found your mind going to a place where you have a boundary issue, or where someone that you care about has a boundary issue. You just like raise your hand or acknowledge that yes, that I can see, this is something I can understand personally. I can see boundary issues and the results of those.
Yes. Well, can I just offer some examples of what unhealthy boundaries look like? Sometimes people don't recognize that. The unspoken expectation can look like, or the thinking pattern is, he or she should know what I want. He or she should know what to give me. I remember when I was first married to my ex now, our first Valentine's Day, I was looking forward to like these wonderful gifts, right? And I said, I can't wait to see what he gets me. And it fell way short of my expectations. And so after I got over my shock, I was like, how fair is that? I didn't tell him what I wanted. And we were just newly married. So that was unfair. And so from then on, we had an agreement about gifts, which was probably the best part of the marriage. But expecting others to automatically know what you want and what you need and give it to you is clearly an unhealthy boundary. And that's true in personal relationships and in business. Telling all about self or others. Are you an open book? Do you give every detail about yourself? Do you say way more in the conversation than is necessary to have a nice, open, mature dialogue? Telling all, giving way too much information, I call it spillage, is an unhealthy boundary as well. We'd already talked about going against your own values and beliefs to please someone else. When I worked in domestic violence, that was pretty much across the board, where I'll say he, because it was predominantly, batteries are predominantly men. He would insist or demand that she would dress a certain type of way. And if she wasn't comfortable being as sexy as he wanted her to be, wearing as much makeup as he wanted her to, she did it just to please him, knowing inside that that wasn't okay for her. She felt bad about herself because she did it, and she felt bad about herself because she didn't please him being her natural self. So going against your own values to please another person is another boundary issue. Taking on another person's emotions, that's that emotional boundary, the fuzzy stuff. Accepting food and gifts or sex that you don't want to go along, to get along, or to please another person. I have like 18 food allergies. And so people are offering me food all the time. Taste this, taste that, taste this, taste that. And I'm like, I can't, I have food allergies. Oh, a little bit won't hurt you. And I'm like, well, it will. So I have to be firm in that boundary that my health depends on what I put in my body. And I can't just go around taste testing what people offer me. As kind as they are being, it's not good for me. So in that, I have to say no. Even though I don't say no directly, I find a way to decline. So don't accept something that you're not comfortable with. And not noticing someone else's inappropriate boundaries. Oh, they didn't mean it. They were just kidding, or you just let it slide. That is a boundary issue too, because when you overlook or ignore someone's poor boundaries, it emboldens them to keep doing it, because human nature is people will continue to do what they're allowed to get away with. Most people do not self-correct without consequences. We have a conscience, and our conscience speaks to us and tells us when we've done wrong so we can take measures to not do it again. Most people ignore that. They will feel the guilt and the discomfort in the moment that the conscience shows up. But as soon as that passes, then they go back to their habitual behavior. So not noticing someone else's inappropriate boundaries or ignoring them enables them to keep doing it because they've gotten away with it. So every time they get away with it, that emboldens them to do it again. Not only that, the more they do it, then it escalates. Have you ever said to yourself, oh, it's gotten worse? It didn't used to be this bad. That's because the natural pattern of human behavior is escalation. So if you don't apply appropriate boundaries, appropriate consequences to behavior that doesn't work for you, then it'll keep happening and it'll get worse. And with these clients who are coming in with depression and anxiety, that keeps going over in their minds. Why do they keep doing this? Why do they keep doing this? They know it hurts, they know it bothers me, but why do they keep doing it? So that makes them feel worse about themselves. They start to feel unlovable. Their self-esteem plummets, because if they were worthy, then people wouldn't keep doing that to them. When that's not true at all. People keep doing that to them because they can, because they get away with it. And then it will get worse over time. And a lot of people think that, boundaries are about saying no. Boundaries are not about just saying no. Boundaries are clearly identifying what you need and what you need to do to get those needs met. Yes, sometimes you will need to use the word no. You will need to use the term not right now. I'm not comfortable with that. You'll have to find the language that fits your personality. However, boundaries are behaved. It's not just verbal. So there are these stages of learning how to set and maintain healthy boundaries, and that's what the Healthy Boundaries for Overwhelmed Women's course is all about. It's very detailed, it's pretty intense. And so it'll go through the foundations, it'll go through the emotional wellness piece, it'll go through the enmeshment piece, it'll go through the communication, how to communicate your boundaries. And communication is verbal, nonverbal, and for me, behavioral. Verbal is the least effective. Words are about 7% of effective communication. Because when it comes to boundaries and someone getting what they want from you, they will, number one, listen to your words for a loophole, so they can use that against you. So the more you say, the more ammunition you give them to manipulate you with. Not only that, your tone of voice, your volume, your cadence, that plays into the verbal part as well. The nonverbal cues, eye contact, facial expression, posture, must match your words. So just think of when you had to go into an interview, if you were obviously nervous, which would be normal, and if you didn't make eye contact with the interviewer, but you were competent and you were qualified for the position, what would happen if you didn't make contact with the interviewer? Your body language says, I don't deserve this. It doesn't matter what your credentials are on paper. So your body language must match your words for you to be taken seriously. Otherwise, they're just gonna listen to your body language. If you say no, but you're still going forward, they're gonna follow your body language and not your words. Most people will stop there at communication. I go one step further. You must act your boundaries. Your boundaries are living things, so you must put them in action. And what I mean by that is your no must be a part of your words, your nonverbal communication, and what you do with your body. I'll give you an example. Actress Ashley Judd, when the Me Too movement came out, she admitted that she had a meeting with Weinstein at the beginning of her career. I would think it was in '97. So she's a young up-and-coming actress, had a meeting with him in a hotel room, and he made sexual advances to her. She resisted. She said no. She said no. She said no. He kept persisting. And probably other actresses would give in at that point. She left. She physically left. Her no was leaving that situation and risk her career, but her physical safety was more important at that point than her career. So you can't just say no and shrink and then stay. So you have to figure out a way to behave your boundaries. So her behavior, her no was leaving. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What
I know that was a lot.
No, it's as you're speaking, I think of places where I have had trouble with boundaries and dealing with others, and then somebody else comes into the situation, and maybe maybe it's a bully that we're talking about that I'm having trouble dealing with. They're demonstrating manipulative, bully type behavior, and somebody else comes into the situation with that same person, and I'm all eyes and ears to see how they respond. And if it's a person that demonstrates to me what it's like to have a strong boundary with that person who's a bully, that really helps me then to see it in action. And so I guess what I'm getting at is when you develop clear boundaries and you can act those boundaries out in a very mature, emotionally intelligent way, you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping other family members that you care about, because they see you acting that out. And that's the best education you can get. You're helping other people in the workplace. Everyone around you is seeing this demonstration. So it's almost like the best help that you can give others. The best teaching is to master this yourself.
Absolutely. And what you're referring to is modeling. We have these people that we look up to, and they're modeling, what we want to achieve in our careers. And so we follow their steps. They are modeling what we want in our personal relationships. So we follow what they do. So yeah, it is very powerful to see other people be what we want to be or what we strive for. So yeah, that's very powerful. And I'll add to that, you had that situation with the bully, then someone else came in. Boundaries are also contextual. Boundaries are, they're not static. So boundaries, your boundaries should be flexible and adaptable to environment, to timing, to the person, to the situation. I worked with a couple for 6 months before I knew they were married. Their boundaries were so clear at work. Even when they sat next to each other in meetings, there was no touchy, no kissing, no hugging or anything like that. The only way I knew that they were married is that they both had the same weird last name. I asked questions. Their boundaries were very clear at work, that we're employees, we're not a couple. And so your boundaries they should be flexible. If they are static, then that is a boundary issue. If they're static and too closed, means you've got a wall, you don't let love in, you don't let love out. That's a problem. Or the opposite of that is to be too open. That's kind of the tell-all person, is to be too open. You let anything in and out. And what you really attract in that situation are takers and abusers. And the takers and abusers are usually the people with the walls. So they don't want to give much, but they can, they can take all they want from an open person. So boundaries are contextual and they should be flexible.
Okay, so I'm thinking now, you have convinced me that boundaries are not a simple thing.
They're not.
It's not like I can say, oh, I need to do these 3 things and my whole boundary issue in life, in any relationship, is going to be fixed. Here's my 3-step method. What you're saying is it's not like that. So you've given us some basic ideas of what boundaries are, boundary issues, the damage that can be caused when boundaries when we let them be too loose or too tight. If we wanted to be a student and really improve our boundaries, what do we need to know that we haven't learned tonight? I feel like we've only scratched the surface. I mean, what can I go away and do?
Well, we have only scratched the surface and we haven't gotten into the emotional wellness part of it much. I would say first and foremost, to start your road to setting and maintaining healthy boundaries is to understand that you are already empowered to nurture and protect yourself. Far too often we wait for someone stronger, smarter, more attractive, more powerful to tell us what to do in life and how to be. That's not the case. You're born with inner wisdom that has all the information you will ever need to reach your optimal health, to be your healthiest self, to be joyful, connected, confident, and complete. That information is already there. So it's you acknowledging that about yourself, and then taking responsibility for your choices around relationships and situations. Just that internal, those 2 things that you commit to internally will start the shift for you, and you'll be more open to absorbing and learning the information that's in Healthy Boundaries for Overwhelmed Women in that course. boundaries are not as simple as changing a light bulb. They're not as simple as saying no. There's a whole foundation of what boundaries are about that will make it easier for you to say no, that will give you the courage and the confidence to say no, because you'll see that it works and you'll feel empowered in that process. And you'll reconnect with that part of you that already knows this stuff. You already know it.
So you're not going to just leave us hanging. There are things that we can do following this.
No.
That's good to hear, because this kind of conversation does raise issues and emotions, and
Yes.
you don't want to just leave it at that. You know, do something about it. Yeah.
No, we definitely don't want to leave it at that. And I want everyone to have a real good understanding of how our emotional responses into our choices. The fear of of losing approval or love, being sad if someone leaves us because we're becoming healthier and they want us to stay the same. So the emotion component is huge. And then there are a way to practice communicating. There's a tool in the program for practicing how to communicate your boundaries. The foundation, though, is that reconnection with self and understanding why boundaries are so important. Why boundaries are so important, because you can't achieve optimal health without them. You won't stick to a diet. You won't stick to an exercise regimen. You won't follow through on doctor recommendations. You won't keep your word in your relationship. You'll be late all the time. You take on too much on your plate. You'll end up canceling at the last minute, like a lot of people do, because they just can't meet what they overextend themselves because they have poor boundaries. So boundaries they affect every area of life, every area.
Well, at this point, let's just open it up for questions.
Okay.
Who has a question for Glen?
Well, I don't know if I really have any questions per se. I've been on the self-discovery, path for about 17 years now. So it's been a long time. It's not going to happen overnight. But what keeps coming back to me all the time when I had to find out what my boundaries were, the unhealthy boundaries that were around me, and how my physical body was taking a toll, and what I needed to do for myself, because there was nobody else that was going to do it for me except for me. And so I just chipped away at it. And that's how my whole yoga experience started, because I was not going to take medication. I told the cardiologist I was going to see her in 3 months after I started my yoga practice, which I've been doing ever since, and that helped me out dramatically. And why did it? Because it taught me awareness. And it taught me that everybody else is on a different level of consciousness. And that was the big epiphany for me. Because for so many years, it was like, well, why didn't they do that? Why did, what happened here? What happened, and then being overwhelmed and being a mother, a daughter, a doctor, a wife, the list goes on. And yes, it was all overwhelming. So it was all part of the process, but it did not happen overnight. And it's just a constant learning experience.
It
I
is.
look at myself where I am now. I look at myself where I was 2 years ago, 7 years ago, et cetera. And I can really say that, I'm learning. I'm always learning. I'm learning what I can do to be the best version of me. And especially now with being in my part 2 of life, being out of mainstream medicine for the most part and into my passion of what I love to do, has really just opened up for me what I needed to do. And that is to bring it all to the forefront of what I want to do for me. Not being a bad mother, I'm not being a bad wife,
No.
whatever. I'm doing it for me. And that took me, I had to learn that. Nobody else was going to teach me that or show me that unless I showed myself.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, Denise, because you're absolutely right. Another sign of a poor boundary is when people around you pressure you to not take care of yourself, because they want your time, they want your energy, and they want your attention. And you have nothing to give when your cup is empty. So having good boundaries it ensures that you're always full enough to purposely and effectively love the people around you. Because if you're broken, how can you help anyone else? And you're absolutely right, Denise. It's progression. And Tony Robbins likes to say that happiness is progress. As you grow and you develop, your happiness is in that achievement. So thank you very much for sharing that. You do continue to learn and evolve in this way, and it's really empowering and self-love to be able to say that I'm in a much better place than I was 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 17 years ago. So thank you for that.
I think boundaries it sounds like it's an art form. And I think taking up a violin, and if I've never played a violin before, which I haven't, and I pick it up, it's going to make horrible music. But if I keep practicing, maybe I'll get a little better. If I get a teacher, I'll get even better. I learn how to read music. I learned how to hold the violin. I learned how to move my hands. I learned, just how to feel the music. And pretty soon, over time, I could become a master. But it's, Denise, it's definitely not overnight.
No, it's not overnight. And what I would like to challenge everyone to do is to if you send me your email address, then I'll share with you my boundaries worksheet. So it's a tool to assess where your boundaries are now. And when you do that, I challenge everyone to look at your boundary issues, pick 3, no more than 3, and start with the simplest one, the one that doesn't have the biggest impact on your life. For example, one client, she just had trouble. She was a tell-all person. So when she was going to a store and say a homeless person asked her for money, she would go into this big, long explanation of why she couldn't afford it. She has her bills and she's got this and she's got that and she's got that. And so we started with that because that had the least negative impact on her life. And so she practiced the next time someone asked her for money, she practiced just saying no, or I don't have any cash, or just one short statement. And she blossomed from that. She really blossomed from that. So I'd like everybody to take a look at your boundaries and pick one that has the least impact on your life and practice with it. After you go through the course, practice with it, or after you look at the boundary questionnaire.
How are they going to contact you, Glen?
You can email me at Glen, Glen, at Glen, GlenAlex.com, Glen at glenalex.com, and it's just one N. And just mention this webinar, and I will email you the boundaries questionnaire.
And I'll put that address on the page that I showed you from LasVegasAreaTrails.com and the health education link. I'll put that, I can put that address on there. Would that be okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can put up the address to the online course as well. Okay, excellent. I will do that. And let's see, I may even already have it here. Let's take a quick look. Here we are. Okay, well, there is the Healthy Boundaries course. Here's Glen's website. I will add your email, Glen, to this. And then also note here, webinar replay video will appear here. So following the webinar, I'll get this video, replay video up, and you'll have that also. Okay. Fantastic. Well, excellent. We have time for one more question. Anyone else have a pressing question?
comment? Okay, well,
Okay,
sometimes
clear as
you
mud.
just want to reflect.
Oh, yeah.
You just want to reflect on these things. So good. Yeah, take these thoughts, reflect on them, and if you can think of just one thing you might do in the next 7 days that will help you to create more healthy boundaries. And it could be emailing Glenn, but it can also be something that you picked up from this this interview. Was this valuable to everyone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it was great. It's just, I mean, for me, it's the awareness. You know, once, I mean, I just have that awareness now where I didn't years ago, and just used to just do and do and do and just want to please everybody and be, you know, and then after a while, you just are burned out to the hilt.
Yes, yes.
You know, it's all part of the process. And a lot of it has to do with the way, you know, there are people's certain personality types that will do that. And I know mine, and I'm the one that just keeps giving and, you know, and here I am getting hooked up with the takers and the takers and,
Yes.
you know, and I think that has something to do with it also, you know. And then it also, like I said, the biggest epiphany for me was everybody's on their own level of consciousness.
Yeah.
When I had that epiphany one day, I was like, yep, that kind of answers a lot of questions of why somebody to do this and this and this, and you're expecting this to happen and that to happen,
Yes.
whether it be your personal life or your business life or your career. And, you know, so, and that's another thing, because that causes a lot of friction and resistance within you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And your awareness was key in reconnecting you with your inner wisdom. So just being aware for some people is enough of a trigger that you automatically know what boundaries need to be set and strengthened. So well done.
Well, I want to thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn, for bringing up such an important subject to the forefront of our minds. And we've got some things to absorb, to think, and to do, you know, change our behavior. And thank you, you know, Denise, I know you shared a lot, and I really appreciate your insight that you brought to this also.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the path
So.
I've been on for a long time. A long path.
Yeah, well, you know, I bet every one of us has been on that path,
Sure.
and maybe we just haven't had the opportunity to articulate that and to really understand it. Maybe it's been subconscious, but you know, we wish you, you know, everyone here, continued growth and happiness and completeness, as Glenn says, connected, confident, complete, and joyful, is it?
To be joyful, connected, confident, and complete.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, this concludes this. Yeah. This concludes.
I just want to thank
our webinar.
everybody for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.